Well, good evening, and thanks for joining me here for another session of The Miracle Within. And we're just basically doing an introduction to A Course in Miracles. So hopefully this will be somewhat insightful, and you will be able to access the Course without a lot of difficulty, without a lot of challenges. So anyway, I see we've got one person who has joined us, and hopefully we'll start to go viral here in a matter of minutes. But what we're talking about is A Course in Miracles. And the Course, really, once you get into it, it will become not only a source of insight and reflection and observation, but it really makes life easier in the most visceral way. So it's not like something that is all theoretical and interesting, but really not that relevant to day-to-day life. So the Course is very grounded in truth and reality. And so, and if you notice me looking up at the top of the screen here, it's not because I'm experiencing the rapture, although that could possibly occur, who knows. But basically, I'm getting a lot of my information here from the Course website that you can access if you want to read A Course in Miracles without investing in the actual book itself. It is available online. Just go on and look for A Course in Miracles now, David Hoffmeister's site. So as we're segueing now from last week's show, where we were looking at the introduction to A Course in Miracles, the preface, I want to finish up with that so that we have, a little bit of clarity as to what the whole thing is all about. So we went through the sections on how it came to be, Helen Schuckman and William Thetford, and that somewhat miraculous process that caused A Course in Miracles to come into manifestation. So going a little bit further down here to finish up this section is what the Course is really all about. This section is what it says. And in summation, in a very brief context, this is what the Course in Miracles presents to us. It says, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And that's the beauty of the Course, is it reduces everything to the most fundamental level of thinking. And it is a process of changing the way you think and the effect that thought has on your life. So anyway, this is how A Course in Miracles begins. It makes a fundamental distinction between the real and the unreal, between knowledge and perception. Knowledge is truth under one law, the law of love or God. Truth is unalterable, eternal, and unambiguous. It can be unrecognized, but it cannot be changed. It applies to everything that God created, and only what He created is real. And that's really what we're getting back to, is that absolute bottom line of truth. It is beyond learning because it is beyond time and process. It has no opposite, no beginning, and no end. It merely is. So basically, that removes the idea of any kind of duality that might be entered into in explaining all these principles that the Course in Miracles offers us. It says the world of perception, on the other hand, is the world of time, of change, of beginnings, and of endings. It is based on interpretation, not on facts. It is the world of birth and death, founded on the belief in scarcity, loss, separation, and death. It is learned rather than given, selective in its perceptual emphasis, unstable in its functioning, and inaccurate in its interpretations. So essentially what we're being told here is that if you can see it, taste it, touch it, hear it, or smell it, it is not real. It is ephemeral. It is a part of this constantly changing, unstable state of fantasy that we have created here. And even though, we have all of our scientific principles and all of our accepted norms, et cetera, when you really start observing and looking at the fundamental nature of things, everything that we believed 1,000 years ago has gone through tremendous evolution and fluctuation and interpretation and then reinterpretation. And A Course in Miracles is trying to get us back to the basic principles of what life itself is. And life is, number one, not a material or mortal experience. Now, it may seem that way within this dream that we are experiencing, but the truth is, A Course in Miracles points out that life itself is God. So there is no other life existent anywhere in creation or anywhere in being. So it's bringing us around to that recognition that fundamentally life is a non-corporeal, ongoing state of being, and it is shared with God because it is so intimately joined with God that there is no separation, there is no duality. So that can be kind of frightening for the average individual, because basically you spend 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years crafting this identity, creating who you imagine yourself to be. And all of a sudden, A Course in Miracles comes along and says, no, that really isn't who you are. That's who you are imagining yourself to be for a temporary period of time. But in truth, you have always been in that state of the eternal, and you have never stepped outside of God, because in truth, since God is life itself, if you were able to separate yourself from God, you would be extinguished, and a part of God would be lost. So there is a, I guess you could say, like a protective element within that divine being that we imagine as God, because God really is not something you can containerize, put into a box. So that state of being that you actually are is something so foreign to what you're currently experiencing that it is challenging to the point of being terrifying. The idea of giving up who you are to become the truth of who you actually are. And you are, in truth, God in expression. And again, that's so seamless that there is no duality within that. There may be, on this level of life, there may be a sense of paradox around that. But the truth is that we are God within God. And once we surrender to that truth, once we surrender to that identity change, then all of a sudden, all of the events, all of the circumstances in our life is up for change. It means that basically you are reclaiming your invulnerability. You are reclaiming your true identity. And within that, you are reclaiming your true power in life. And that doesn't mean that you're going to all of a sudden start running around turning water into wine or anything like that, although that may be an option. It definitely has been for some people in the past. But the whole point is to arrive back at a state where you are recognizing yourself as an expression of love. The person who dictated the course to Helen, the individual known as Jesus, made some very brief statements that were very to the point. One of them being God is life, and the other one is that God is love. So whenever you are identifying yourself with anything but that existence, that quality that we understand to be life, and that element we understand to be love, then you're misidentifying yourself. And the Course is the journey back to cleansing your consciousness, your mind, of all of these erroneous beliefs about your identity. So it really is a very rewarding, fulfilling, exciting journey that we're on in A Course in Miracles. And as we continue to, recognize what the Course does, which is it replaces your current way of thinking with a truly powerful self-concept and a complete and total acceptance of the fact that everybody around you is in fact you in a different form, in a different format. So it's a thought process, a thought system. It is a form of psychotherapy, and it is disguised in the idea of spirituality. How cool is that? So again, we've got all kinds of possibilities for paradox that show up with A Course in Miracles. And it does cause us to stop and try to comprehend exactly who it is that we are and what it is that we are here to accomplish. And, the goal of all of this is arriving in a state of peace. So how many people in this world do you know or even know of that live in that ongoing state of peace with life itself? And, identities come to mind like Muji and, some of the Course in Miracles teachers and Mother Teresa and all these different individuals who have attained that level of being at peace no matter what their surroundings were. And that's what you're on the journey toward once you pick up A Course in Miracles and start to actually engage with it. So now that we have pretty much looked up or reviewed this introduction to A Course in Miracles, I want to jump over to the next section here, which is instead of the text, we're going to be looking at the workbook for students. And we're going to start off with the first lesson in the lesson plan, which is really kind of remarkable. It really is disassembling, like I said, it's disassembling our sense of who we are and what it is that our life really is all about. And so we'll start off here with workbook lesson number 1. And I'm scrolling away here, trying to get it to show up for me. And here we go. Workbook lesson number 1. And it asks us to just settle in and absorb these ideas without resisting them. And it says, nothing I see in this room or on the street, from this window or in this place means anything. Now look slowly around you and practice applying this idea very specifically to whatever you see. This table does not mean anything. This chair does not mean anything. This hand does not mean anything. This foot does not mean anything. This pen does not mean anything. Then look farther away from your immediate area and apply the idea to a wider range. That's pretty, self-explanatory. And when you stop and think about it, what it's starting to do with the first lesson is to disassociate you from from the world that you have imagined, the world that you have created. In other words, everything that you experience in your surroundings is a reflection of your belief about that particular thing. And that's based on memory. And memory is, to a certain degree, a trap. So what we're trying to do here is to disengage from this trap of memory, of encountering objects or individuals or situations and preconceiving what their meaning is and what their function is for you in a personal way. So it starts to unhinge you from that idea that a pencil is only for writing. You know, if you really think about it, a pencil can show up in a multitude of different functions. And I grew up in the 1950s in Colorado in ranch country, and we were all guiders, I guess you could say. You would grab something that was immediately at hand and use it for whatever need you had in the moment. And that's what the course really is starting to give us a direction toward, is to be able to look at things around us and observe them merely as an observer, not observe them as something that you already have placed conditions on. So, you know, when you really think about that, that does kind of unhinge things. That does cause you to step out of being a product of the past or project into the future. It causes you to stop and experience the moment right here, right now. And that really is the door that is being opened up to shift our thinking around and to create a new thought system for us. So the third section here says, notice that these statements are not arranged in any particular order and make no allowance for the differences in the kinds of things to which they are applied. So we're being urged to not have any conditions that we have placed on any of the circumstances or the objects around us. And definitely that applies to people as well. If you can experience every encounter with someone that you know, seeing them in this moment for the first time, instead of carrying the history of who you thought they were, who you observed them to be, who you believed them to be, then that can radically transform relationships for you in all directions. And again, this is the beauty of the course, is that it's shaking us loose from clinging to all of these conditions of identity that we have imposed upon ourselves. That is the purpose of the exercise. The statement should be merely applied to anything you see. As you practice the idea for a day, use it totally indiscriminately. Do not attempt to apply it to everything you see, for these exercises should not become ritualistic. So it's basically saying, just, you know, enter into this process in a very casual way. Allow it to kind of bubble up from within you. And that is what a very famous woman, Mary Baker Eddy, a very famous metaphysician who wrote the Science and Health, which is the foundation of Christian Science. But she would often refer to this transformative process that we fall into as chemicalization. So if you can imagine taking an Alka-Seltzer, dropping it into a glass of water, that's kind of what you're trying to do with your brain or with your mind, is to chemicalize it, to allow it to become transformed. And within that process, there's a purification that occurs. So it says, only be sure that nothing you see is specifically excluded. In other words, we don't want to try to protect any of our beliefs about the past. We don't want to hide anything from this process. One thing is like another as far as the application of the idea is concerned. With each of the three lessons, each of the first three lessons should not be done more than twice a day each, preferably morning and evening, nor should they be attempted for more than a minute or two, unless that entails a sense of hurry. A comfortable sense of leisure is essential to this journey. So right off the bat, we're stepping into territory that can become problematic for some people who are so adapted and so clinched into the reality they have created for themselves that they start to lose a sense of being attached to the life that they have. So the course gives us this beginning, and then the next couple of lessons follow through on, the next level of transforming our mind and the process that we use to think with. So it is good to take it easy if you're new to the course. And like I said, it's available online. So, you can try these exercises for the first few days and see what happens. I do believe that it will cause you to see the world from an entirely different angle if you hang in there and are consistent in doing these things that are broken down into a process of gently learning how to let go of all of the belief systems and all of the preconceptions that you've all clung to in the past. So workbook lesson number 2 says, I have given everything I see in this room or on this street or from this window in this place all the meaning that it has for me. Now that is really to a small, or to a large degree, a shocking statement, is to realize that everything that you're observing in your surroundings is something that you have defined for yourself. And while the ego clings to that, the ego is going to say, well, that's the way it's got to be. That really is limiting everything that you're exposed to in the world you inhabit to a very narrow spectrum of being. So anyway, go on with this particular section here. It says the exercises with this idea are the same as those of the first one. Begin with the things that are near you and apply that idea to whatever your glance rests on. Then increase the range outward. Turn your head so that you include whatever is on either side. If possible, turn around and apply the idea to what is behind you. Remain as indiscriminate as possible in selecting subjects for its application. Do not concentrate on anything in particular, and do not attempt to include everything you see in a given area, or you will introduce strain into the process here. Merely glance easily and fairly quickly around you, trying to avoid selection by size, brightness, color, material, or relative importance to you. Take the subject simply as you see them. And, you're just going back and attaching that recognition to everything that you have been living with in this state of unconscious defining. So it's going to start rattling at some point as you start to get deeper and deeper into this process, deeper and deeper into this journey. And within that shaking up, within that rattling, you're going to begin to see a whole new world start to emerge. You're going to begin to be able to participate in life in new ways that you didn't even imagine were possible. And that is really one of the remarkable things with A Course in Miracles, is that it gives you a whole new vision and a whole new way of expressing yourself. And how transformative is that? I mean, it just really is very, very profound and goes very, very deep. Finishing up lesson number 2 here, it says, merely glance easily and fairly quickly around you. Pardon me, I had just read that. It says, try to apply the exercise with equal ease to a body or a button, a fly or a floor, an arm or an apple. The sole criterion for applying the idea to anything is merely that your eyes have lighted on it. Make no attempt to include anything particular, but be sure nothing is specifically excluded. So this is, getting us down to a deeper level of truth and beauty and reality and consciousness. It's cleaning up all of our misbeliefs about the things that are comfort zones for us, and causing us to kind of walk out on the water here, and to call on an allegory from Jesus, out in the Sea of Galilee, all of a sudden a storm comes up and Jesus is out walking across the water and has stilled the storm. And that was because he was able to see things with such clarity that he could see the illusion, and as a part of his thought process, transform the illusion. And that's really what we're trying to do here, is to transform the illusion that we exist in, and to give it more light, to give it more grace, to bring it into a state of being able to live in an ongoing condition of love. So imagine what your life would be like if your response to every crisis that arose, your response to every combative moment that you have with your husband, your wife, your neighbors, your kids, your parents, whoever it is, imagine that transformed into a state of love and acceptance. And the way that we attain that is to get out of that state of judgment. And this is the first step in keeping us on track and removing ourselves from having a judgmental approach to everything that we encounter in life. So this first couple of lessons really does open you up to a whole new vision of what life can become. And within that, there is a tremendous amount of joy, a tremendous amount of serenity, tremendous amount of peace, and most importantly, for you, a tremendous amount of empowerment. You are on your journey with the Course in Miracles to become invulnerable, and that's really the darkest aspect of our existence here in this mortal world. We're always living in an ongoing state of fight or flight. We're always having to protect ourselves and defend our territory and stand up for what we believe in. The Course in Miracles helps us to penetrate those illusions of conflict, brings us around to a state where we're living in a serene world, and we're encountering experiences that help us transform other people's vision of the world they inhabit. This is, like I said, the second edition of The Miracle Within. If you go online and type in themiraclewithin.org, you'll find the website. There's a lot of material about A Course in Miracles. All of the different video threads I'm doing on the course are available there. And I hope you will join me in 1 week. We'll be looking at this next stage of looking at our thought system and working on how to transform our thought system, turn it into something entirely new, and take on, literally, in the most literal sense, godlike qualities, godlike essence, and reclaim our truth in God. And that is that we are spiritual beings. We are perfect. We are unflawed. We are loving. We are eternal. And we are without judgment of those around us because we recognize there is only one life and we are all one within that life. So get out there, share the love, pass the love around. I will see you in 7 days, and hopefully everybody will be having a little bit of a shake-up in the context of their lives about what they expect things to be or what they assume things are. So we'll see you soon. Have a great night.